Hello, my name is Mark Pachabowski. I work for RAN 3D and Ascent doing training and courseware curriculum for different CAD systems. Here we're going to take a look at the 3D Experience CATIA 2023 um, Mechanical Systems Experience app. Um, in this app, we're going to learn how to define a kinematic simulation using the Kinematic Excitation Recorder tool. We're going to learn how to compute that simulation, how to export an animation, and finally, how to create a local copy or file of that animation that can be played outside of the 3D experience. This is not the same as export. You do need to export it to get to this location, but it is a more involved process. So we're going to take a look at that. Um, Let me first get in here. One second. Get that out of the way. Um, this assembly has already been defined using the Mechanical Systems Design app. It already has engineering connections that are a bunch of revolutes between the components, and we already have a mechanism representation with the joints of those components and the commands driving each one. I have a separate video where we talked about how to set all that up and create it if that is not something you've already seen. Um, from this, what I want to do is create the simulation. So to do that, we're going to switch apps. We're going to go from the Mechanical Systems Design app, where we were able to create those commands and those joints, and switch over to the Mechanical Systems Experience, where we'll be able to simulate each one of those. Now, what that did is it created this little window called the Mechanical Systems Experience window. It asked me if I want to create a mechanism. I already have one, this mechanism representation here, so I don't need that turned on. Do I want to create the kinematic scenario? I'm going to manually create that, so I'll leave that turned off. You can give it a new name. I'm going to leave it with this default name here. Actually, let's call it mechanical arm. And mechanical arm kinematic simulation. What that does is it will create a brand new object within the 3D experience. This object is shown at the top of the specifications tree. We have the old one, which was just the kind of product, the assembly itself with the mechanical representation in it. And now we have, if I don't click the wrong X, this is a new object that is linked to that assembly with the mechanical representation. Currently, there's a model node with the assembly in it, and there is a scenario node which is currently empty, and we will be defining that. So what I want to do is I want to control this mechanical arm. There's a number of different laws and excitations that allow us to do that. For this example, I'm going to use the Kinematic Excitation Recorder. That brings up this kinematic scenario, allowing me to define if there was any probes that we're testing for clashes or anything like that. We'll not going to get into that here. And we can set up what the total length of our scenario is going to be. So I'm going to say 10 seconds with 1 second times stamps in there. We're going to actually be able to define this by how many times we record an animation. But if maybe you wanted to move this arm within 30 seconds, we could define that. And each timestamp means between second between each time it hits record. We'll hit OK. Now, that shows us all of the commands. Now, this arm has quite a few different commands to it. Between each part, there's a revolute, which means it can spin between this seam, it can rotate on this elbow, spin on that seam, rotate on that elbow, spin, and then each one of these fingers can open and close. Currently, it is set to this position. If I manipulate any of this and then hit the record button, that will record at the first step. I'm going to have it record where it's currently positioned, and I'll click record now, so it records the 0 position, 0 degrees for everything that's there. Now I can start controlling this. Now, if I turn on automatic, I don't have to hit record every single time. Each time I manipulate one of these, it'll automatically hit record and make that another step or another second in the animation. So I'm going to turn on automatic, graze that out, and we're going to start by grabbing, let's go with the command 2, which should be this elbow, and I'm going to rotate it. Let's go 50 degrees. Now, the way I just grabbed it and moved it and then typed it in, it may have actually recorded two different steps. The first second may be the 43 degrees, and then the second second would be the remaining 7 degrees of spinning. So you got to kind of be careful with that. There's no good way of changing that, so I'd have to create a new one if I want to change it or make a modification. So I turned it to that degree. Once it's there, I realized that I'd like to, let's see, grab this one and I want to spin it. I want to grab this one here and rotate it. So those are automatically recording between each one. And then I'm going to come in here and I want to open this finger and I want to open this finger. Now, if we wanted to turn it again, we could turn it, and then I'm going to close them. Now, because it's automatically recording them, when I hit OK, it returns back to its original position, and it recorded each finger individually. That may not be what your intent is. It's not really what I wanted to hear, but I want to show you what that looks like. So what we can do is I'm going to take that scenario that I just set up and recorded. I'll come down here to the scenario section of my action bar, and I'll click on the compute generative results with global update. Now there's a little simulate button that shows up in your screen window that basically a progress bar, and it tells me the limits that were reached here once it's finished. I'm going to hit close. I'll come down here and say play animation. The experience player toolbar appears. And I'm going to change it so that instead of 1 second between each frame, basically, I'm going to do 10 frames for each second. So you should see 10 different positions for each one of those things that I recorded. Now we'll go ahead and hit play. It still happens really fast, but over 9 seconds, I must have hit record 9 times, it recorded each one of those. Now you can slow that down. I can say times 0.1. Now there's going to be 100 frames in between each second. It obviously doesn't play in real time, so it's going faster than that, but you can slow it down and see the animations that were taking place. Now you can see the fingers move individually because I had automatic turned on. If that's not what you wanted, you can double click on this scenario and we can make changes, but you're not able to delete those recorded steps. The only way to really do that would be to delete this, right click and say delete. And now I can come in here and say record again. Set my number of seconds. I'm going to get it more close to 10. Again, it's automatically defining it based on how many times it hits record. I'll leave it at 1 second time steps. But this time I'm not going to turn on automatic. Because I don't turn on automatic, I can have multiple things changing at the same time. So, for example, I come in here and I manipulate this, spin that down. Actually, I'm going to set that back. Nothing has happened. So even though I made a mistake, nothing's happened. I'm going to hit record with everything in its current position. So that's my 1 second. Now I'm going to come in here and move this. I realize I want it to be 75. I type in 75. I don't have to worry about it recording this 2 separate steps. I can hit that and hit record. If I want to spin this, I can. At the same time that's happening, I'm going to have this open, and we're going to open this to 80, and we'll move this one to 80. Again, nothing has been recorded until I hit the record button. So now we could spin that up. I'm going to hit record, and then I'm going to close these, which will go with -10 and -10. click out of it to get it to update. It collides, but we'll deal with that later. Hit OK, or hit record, then hit OK. It returns back to its original position. Now I've got this new scenario. I'm going to click compute with global update. And now with the results active, it changes my action bar down here. I can click on play animation. If it's at 1 second, each one of those recordings happens in 1 frame, and it's really too fast. Slow it down. I'll slow it down even more. And we can always adjust if necessary, but that's going to show me that animation. Okay. You can also loop it, so I could just have it endlessly animating whatever it is I'm trying to animate. Now, this simulation can always be found by going to the animation can always be found by selecting on the results of scenario 2, whatever the name of it happened to be, and clicking on play animation. But you have to have this object called the mechanical arm kinematic simulation open on your screen. If you're working with a large assembly and you want to be able to simulate this arm that's part of a much bigger piece of machinery, you may not want to have to go find this specific object. You just want to be able to use this assembly that's buried within the larger piece of equipment. So what we can do is come down here to export animation. If I click on export animation, there's really not much involvement from the user. It's going to pop up a little window, progression bar, as it records that. Let's see, I want to select results of scenario 2, so it does the right one. So there is that usually that's already selected. And then once it's done exporting, it automatically opens up with this animation was successfully exported. What does that mean? Some users might think that makes it exported outside of 3DEXPERIENCE. That's not the case. What it has done, it is created inside this mechanical arm assembly an animation. That animation can be played by double-clicking on this from within the main assembly, and you don't have to be within the simulation. If I go back to my original assembly, there's that animation. I can double-click on it. A new kind of player bar appears. It's called player. And you can play it. Again, it's going too fast. I can click on this little speed gauge, and the time control shows up here. We can slow it down. We can change it from speed if there was a different option there. Slow it down, and then now we can hit play. It's still relatively fast because I had such quick motions to it, but it allows us to be able to play through the simulation. If you want to be able to make this a video outside of 3DEXPERIENCE so that you can play it in a presentation and you don't have to load up 3DEXPERIENCE and search for all your files, what we can do is click on this little options gear. If we go to the animation tab, we can say record movie. You can click on the setup option, and it allows you to choose your codec, how it's being compiled. Depending on what third-party programs are installed in your computer, there may be more options here on how it's going to compress it. I'm going to make an AVI file, so I'm going to use this VFW codec, and you can define different things about it, the frame rates and that kind of stuff. Once that's set, you will be able to hit minimize that and hit play, and it compiles that for you. This compile movie window automatically appears, or window appears. Hit OK. Now, one thing I didn't do there was pick a very good location for where it was going to be, so I'm going to do it again. Come in here, record movie. Be careful of that. It's easy to do. I'll minimize it. Now I'll hit play. The play is actually where it comes from. Now, I could have go to this location and I would find where that file is, or I can choose a better location. So if I come in here and call this demo video, I'm going to take that location and save it. Now, if I bring up a simple folder browser and navigate to where I had just saved that, there's my demo video AVI. I can double click on that and it puts it into some media player. It may be a different media player depending on your computer, but it allows us to be able to play the simulation and we can see the video. Hope that helps.